quite easy to be reliable, because even a person who is garbage can be reliably garbage. So reliable is just like the same thing over and over again. But let's go ahead and talk about the different types of reliability that we need to know for our NCE. So these are actually way easier, I think, than the validity ones. And the validity ones, there was like 10 of them, as you guys just saw. But in the reliability, there's not that many. So let's talk about them. Starting with our test-retest reliability. So this is actually quite simple. If I give you a test, and then a few weeks later, I give you the same test, that's a test-retest reliability. Are you gonna get similar scores? Now, another, like a little exception to that rule, when we're talking about statistics, if I give you the same test 2 weeks later, your score is more likely to move towards the mean. Because if you think about it, if you spend many, many months studying for your NCE, and then you take your NCE and you get 100, right? And then 2 weeks later, I give it to you again. Everything that you studied and prepared for your NCE is I'm not gonna say it's gonna fly out the window, because if you study long term, like we should, then it should still be in there, right? But you'll probably get a lower score because you're not actively studying. So that's test-retest, giving the same test twice in a period of time. As a teacher, I love to give parallel forms because students love to freaking cheat. So, parallel forms is, guys, I'm gonna give you a test today. It's gonna have 25 questions. And then little Jimmy is looking at little John's paper and notices that he put C, and then when he put C, he got it wrong, because though it was the same test, the answers were flipped around. So parallel test forms are the same version of the test, but in a different way. So one way that they do this is like switching the evens with the odds, or what was the other one that I saw? Split half procedures. Yeah, right here. The examiner can create the parallel forms by splitting them in half and measuring the consistency of two halves, so they can decide if they want to do that through the odds or the evens type of thing. So fun. This next one, internal consistency reliability, I'm going to read it directly off the book because it's very confusing. So this is the most popular approach to assessing the reliability of a test. Currently is the internal consistency method, also known as coefficient alpha. I think it's also called like Krober alpha or something, or Kroesch-Ball alpha, yeah. So coefficient alpha may be particularly thought of as the overall average of the degree to which the individual items of the test are measuring the construct or interest in a similar matter, like we talked about. This approach directly assesses the consistency of the items by comparing each item to the overall test score, actually by calculating a correlation between the score on an item and the correct total score, achieved by subtracting the item score from the total score before computing the correlation. That is a lot. I simply remember that this one's like the most important one. It's the one that's used the most. And because it has a funny name, that's how I remember it. Coefficient alpha, Coefficient alpha. The Cooter-Richardson procedure, also one of these guys, is somewhat similar but an older method. And this estimates reliability, focuses on complex statistical computations to determine how all the test factors relate to one another. Whatever. Next one we have is inter-rater reliability. So this one is used a lot when we have subjective tests. Remember, we talked about the difference between objective and subjective. Objective, there is no denying that that is the answer. Subjective, open to interpretation. So if I give you an open-ended question talking about climate change and why it matters and why it's important, and you go off and off and off, I might disagree with your statement, but another person grading it might agree with it. So that is inter-rater. You have two different people or multiple people grading the answer to see what you get. And those are the main types of reliability that you need to know for your NCE. Yay! Again, I have a more in-depth video in my TikTok link thing, the YouTube that's linked in my bio. And I will put my website in the comments right here. I think that's where they are. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful night.